I have a lot of things to talk to you about, so let's dive in because you've been
Okay.
dreaming a lot of dreams and making a lot of big things happen. So we've been friends for years, but for those who don't know you, will you please introduce yourself to the wild and wise listeners?
Yes. Well, hello to the wild and wise listeners. My name is Ramel Wallace. I'm born and raised in San Diego, California. They know me as the last black man in Barrio Logan. I've lived in all different parts of San Diego. I'm the CEO of the Holyfield, which focuses on identity and creativity and branding. I host Creative Mornings. I work at a PR and marketing firm called BAM, and I'm a community manager, and I really love to focus on community and creativity, and I love technology. And so anything that's touching any of those sectors or communities, I love to help facilitate what's going on in those spaces.
And you have recently had so many big things happening. I feel like between your book, your song Step Dad, which impacted so many people, including myself.
Yeah.
You are on the board for Soho House of Cities Without Houses, which we are together, which I want to dive into.
Yeah.
Had an incredible feature in the Union Tribune around the economy of the creative communities in San Diego. You also had the virality of an Instagram moment with the I'm from San Diego, which I want to dive into because I just thought it was so epic and so it only went viral because it's so true, everything you said. But also, I want to maybe start off with the Black Barrio Logan, Last Man in Barrio Logan art exhibit that took place in April. Just tell us a little bit more about how that unfolded and kind of the story behind it. I think it's a great history lesson for a lot of people around San Diego.
Well, thank you for mentioning all of that, those things that has happened and that I've created or been a part of, because you're always helping not just me see myself, but you're helping people in the community see themselves. When it comes to Black Barrio Logan, that was a moment where I was able to see myself and be reminded by my community and my family, how we got to San Diego, where we came from. And to take it back, this was around 2000, maybe 14, where I was running a studio that was 1,500 square feet. It was for creatives down in Barrio Logan called The Church. While I
Mhm.
was down there, I would always pass this yellow house, and it looked so familiar. So one day I called my mom and I took a picture. I sent it to her. I said, does this house look familiar? And long story short, I had to, go back and forth with her, but she ended up saying, "Oh, that's the house that you grew up in when you were, in elementary school when you were young." And she said, "Not only that, but I lived there, your dad lived there, your auntie lived there, your grandma lived there at a certain time, and your great grandma lived there." Side note that this is not an actual house; this is a townhouse.
Mhm.
And so the odd coincidence that this got me into is learning about housing and redlining and gentrification, because it wasn't something that was passed down to us. It was a place that we could live. And, we might have had a relationship with the landlord that was there, but relationships allowed us to live there. And redlining, which is government sanctioned segregation that was set up between, housing systems, realtors, and the government, it didn't allow us to live many places as Black people in San Diego. So Black Barrio Logan is talking about the bigger reflection of that happening all over San Diego, and a lot of people not even knowing that there was a Black community in San Diego. So we're taking this timeline that you see pop up of Black people existing because we've been displaced in many of places, specifically San Diego in my story, and taking pictures. So I have pictures that go back to my great grandma coming here in the 60s, after the Great Migration or the Second Great Migration. I have pictures of my auntie, my mom growing up. Then I have pictures of myself running the studio with a bunch of other people in Barrio Logan in 2014 to 2018. And so it kind of puts all of these timelines together
Mhm.
and shows the story and tells the story of the displaced, which is often hard to capture. And so
Right.
we were able to do that at Irwin's shop called Futurist Color, which is, he's a person of color. He's Black and he's Filipino. And so he's another example of the resurgence of Black Barrio Logan as it comes and goes and comes and goes, just like a lot of displaced stories do.
Yeah. What an incredible testament to that your gut feeling, right? Like just seeing that house and having that feeling like I've been here before. And that's what I love about you is I think that you listen to your gut, you're so intuitive, but then you're very actionable as well. So it wasn't just, hey mom, was this our house? It was like, okay, great, I want to tell this story. And it's I think that's why I see a lot of myself and you and vice versa. I think we're highly intuitive people who then take action on those intuitions, and those actions on our intuitions always involve community building. And I just think that I see you do that all the time everywhere with so many different things. So thank you for sharing just a little bit of history around that. I think it's incredible and important for people to know more about sort of the inner workings of various communities in San Diego. I think sometimes people get stuck in their little community and don't really think about the history, the changes, the impact that those changes have made. So it's really incredible. I love Erwin as well and got to interview him for a podcast during COVID. It's just been amazing to watch him grow from working at an agency. That's how I met him, working at Basic Agency, to really stepping out and stepping into his own intuition and gut and following
Mm-hmm.
it through action. It's something I admire probably most as a characteristic in people, is their ability to act upon their intuition. So let's dive into your book. I mean, let's talk about it. How did that come about? I mean, again, talk about taking action. It's, how many people say, yeah, I want to write a book one day, but you did it. So tell us more about what it's about, the process, how it's been.
Well, thank you for saying everything that you just said. As a fellow Pisces, I feel
Yeah.
like you know how to swim in these different places. I guess releasing the book is just another form of learning how to swim in another place,
Amen.
because I released an album called Manhood about a year ago, and I wanted to transform it into something else, and was writing a book, like a 100-page book, which I'm still working on. But I needed and I wanted to get the story and the conversation out. And I feel like when I create things, it almost is like a magnet of intuition, and the people come once you create it. It's like if you make it, they will come.
Yeah,
And so I did a photo book, which has, it has words, but it's not the whole version. And
sure.
basically, manhood is a way that I can reinterpret what it means to be a man. I take the term man, MAN, and I turn it into MYN. And I feel like there's a big Y in what it means to be a man and what I've learned. So I'm reinterpreting it for myself and for people in my community, specifically what it means to be a Black man. And I'm looking at the oppression that's happening, the racism that's happening, the sexism that's happening, but also the privilege that comes with being a man and what that means in the conversation. How can you hold those spaces of also exhibiting oppression, but also having it put upon you
Mm,
as a person? And I think it does a unique thing to an individual,
yeah,
and I don't think the conversation has been had in an expansive enough way that's not patriarchal,
right.
that's still not you know exhibiting a lot of domination, a lot of sexism, and I want to open that conversation up so that it can be expanded. And so it's a lot of photos of me nurturing, like,
Mhm,
just being vulnerable in my home, watering my plants,
mhm.
being out front, and just not having that mask of patriarchy and domination and what I've learned to be a man. It's not that. And so the photos with the words is a nice balance and introduction into the full length, like 100-page book that I really want to deep dive into.
Yeah, good for you. I love the idea of ruminating on a book to tell a story and then starting with the creation through photos and a few of those words to kind of get that expression out and then be able to kind of start to pull in the tools, the feedback, the feelings, and then really go in and finish the book. I think I'm always interested in when people do things that I've always wanted to do. I'm assuming that other listeners would want to do too. how did you actually make the book? Like, did you find a publisher? Did you make it in copies? Like, tell us just about like creating a photo book, like quite literally what you did. Because I think
Okay.
sometimes people think it's really far fetched and it's a lot easier. And then other times I think people think it's easy and it actually takes a lot more work. So, what was your process with the actual creation of it?
So the process with the actual creation is still processing. What I love about technology is I saw that Canva did everything. And that technology had just came out. It's a little bit more expensive right now, so I just hopped on it right away. I had the book written in the photo form, but I was just looking for the best format to put it out into.
Right.
I saw that Canva did it and I just made my demo at first. Like I got that first release and it's right there on my counter, and
Mm-hmm.
that was super easy. I had the photos already. Alex Davis took all of the photos for the album cover, and a lot
Yeah.
of those photos didn't make the album, so we turned that into the photos that were going to go into the book. Almost immediately, I started to make it into a book because you could do that easily on Canva. Now
Right.
my next process is going to be showing people the Canva and showing people the book that can help me develop it into easier production.
I
Because I know
see.
that you can put it on Amazon. I know that there are cost effective ways,
Yeah.
but I'm still inching to get it to those cost effective ways.
Yeah.
This creation almost obligates me to find the most efficient way and to
Right.
be able to have that book in, when I go down to a coffee shop or when I go to creative mornings or when I table somewhere and it
Yeah.
begins the conversation. It's almost like wearing a shirt
Yeah.
that says something on it or carrying a book around with you. Now it more obligates me to that creation and it brings it up in conversation. But that first one was Canva.
Mm-hmm.
And I know that every year or every day that I wait to do something, the technology gets more efficient.
Mm-hmm.
So I might not have been able to do it a year ago, but the technology has changed where I can at least put the MVP, the minimal viable product out. And that minimal viable product, which is like the easiest way that you can create an idea, I
Mm-hmm.
could put that out into the world in some type of way. And so thank you, Canva. But I'm also looking
Yeah.
for,
Thank you.
I know people hate on Canva, but I'm like, I wouldn't have it out right now,
Right.
lest that happen.
Right. I love that. That's such great insight. I interviewed for this season Claudia from So Loca, who has also been working on a coffee table book around sustainable fashion. And of course, she brought up our mutual friend, Stacey Edelstein, and how
Oh,
Stacey
yeah.
had found a way to like print these kind of like thick coffee table magazines where they're like flippable, because sometimes what I found is like when you order, there's this thing called chapbooks, which you can put a lot of photos in and get them printed. The hard cover makes it not sort of like flip throughable.
Mm-hmm.
And I thought that was a really interesting thing for people, especially creators, right? Like we put all this stuff up on Instagram to kind of document our life, but to be able to utilize examples of our work or photos of our work to sort of show a testament of our journey. Like I
Yeah.
think my 50-year-old self would appreciate when my 30-year-old, 38-year-old, hello, I'm not 30, my 38-year-old self would put together like what's happened in my career lately, like how cool would it be to, instead of having my cute little photos of my kids and things like that I love to give people in the family as gifts, to really document your own. It's like giving yourself some respect, like really
Yeah.
being able to capture the creation, the behind the scenes, what came out to fruition as a result. Because I think so much when your head is down and you're grinding and you're creating, you truly don't, I don't know anyone that's like really takes in all the way what it is that you do. So being able to
Yeah.
create a photo essay or a photo book around the process of creation, knowing and looking at yourself on how what you were thinking and how much time you had spent writing those lyrics and recording those songs and being in your home, and the thoughts and philosophies around the perception of what it means to be a man. you'll think about that every time you look at those images. And if anything,
Yeah.
while it's a great gift to everyone else, it's the ultimate gift to yourself, to your creative self, to your inner self, to that intuition you keep listening to. And I just think it's such a great idea that more creatives should do is make flip throughs, kind of soft
Yeah.
coffee table books of the process of creation.
That's a good thing. Yeah, the process of it as well. The process of it. And I'm like in the middle of a process of, because I just took this public art class. I have the
Yeah.
last course this weekend, and basically it's teaching me how to make public art, but also art that is more permanent.
Uh-huh.
That can withstand being weathered, that can be outside. And the exhibit of Black Barrio Logan is like a step towards that. It's a gallery, it's not just the music. The book is a step towards that. It's a
Mm.
book, I could put that in a time capsule, and it's not going to decay or say rely on a technology. You could pick
Right.
it up. And so getting and moving towards ways to make things permanent in some type of way. And I know things can't be permanent, but that's part of the artist. We're throwing rocks at the sun and saying, you know what, I had this feeling, this experience, and I want people to be able to see it and experience through time. And
Yeah.
so the book allows it to stand through time for myself and for my family, for people in my community, for other people that are just a part of my ecosystem as well, friends, everything.
Yeah, it's such an interesting concept, permanence in a world where we're creating in such a digital space that everything is quick and gone. And it becomes overwhelming. I think the overwhelm of my children of just information that I didn't even have to deal with back in, the late 80s, early 90s. So I love the idea and the tradition of returning to objects and
Yeah.
permanence to signify what it is that matters in a world that we rely on quick pictures and images to tell us what matters. I think it's a great way to feel really grounded in a world that feels very ever changing. And I think it's something that I feel inspired to do now that I've talked to you.
Thank you. Thank you. And I do want to give a shout out to Moya Bailey. She
Uh-huh.
came up with the term misogynoir, which is misogyny and like digital and film. And basically it talks about Black women issues. And so, talking about sexism, talking about feminism, and how it has specifically affected Black women.
Yeah.
And so I learned about that term, and I said, you know what is the man version? She gave me this framework of, reframing words. And I love what
Mhm.
she did with it in the conversations that she had and held. And I give her a shout out in the book because it's also a resource as well. The
Yeah.
book's not just me, it's a combination of the things that I've read as well, and then spreading that conversation. So, like, when you read this, you can also read that over there and get other knowledge that I've experienced because I'm not just a centerpiece. It's always a connection to a lot of other things, a lot of other people, a lot of other frameworks and philosophies.
Absolutely. I love that. So tell us about the song Stepdad, because that was part of the album, that is also part of the book and part of this conversation, part of a changing and evolving idea of what a man is. Tell us more about that song.
That song, I took a therapy class. I don't even
Hmm.
know what I did therapy, and
Therapy
this was the
session.
first time, yeah, last year. And I was talking to the therapist, and I was like, yeah, I had my stepfather, but I really loved my dad, and my dad wasn't really around like that. And then she said this thing to me that has always stuck to me. She was like, "Oh, so it's kind of like you lost two dads." It's like, whoa. And I had to like sit in the fact that I was so similar to my stepfather, but I had not really acknowledged him fully. And that made me sit in like, oh wow, how has he affected my life? And how much am I like him? And so I made a song, I showed it to, and I gave it to him on Christmas. And
Mm,
so a reel that I put out, that was the one that you saw. A lot of people
yeah,
commented on it,
that was really,
and I
really
appreciate that and you bringing it up. And I'm telling the story of him meeting my mom and how much I appreciate him and how much I'm like him, even though it's hard to like express those feelings.
Yeah.
And gosh, that's part of the process of becoming a man, this like infinite acknowledgement
Yes.
of our relationship. It's an intimate relationship as well, in the sense of like we live together like for a majority of my life. And I've learned so much about how to move through life from him.
Mm-hmm.
And I had to put that in some type of some type of art or creation. And so stepdad is part of that process of becoming it, acknowledging other men that are in my life, and also accepting that I've neglected men in my life.
Mm. That's
You know,
powerful.
I'm one of the men that I've neglected. People that I love in my family are some of the men that I've neglected. And part of the process is stepping away from neglection. And that's a part that I go into the book. Like being a man, MYN, is not carrying neglection as like a deflection of how you really feel.
Ooh, wow. That's powerful. I can see that in the men in my life. And it is so easy to neglect yourself as a man. And I think the conversation of neglection is often around women. We neglect ourselves when we have children. We neglect ourselves
Mm,
to submit to the home and the home's needs. And or the opposite, I'm a workaholic, and so I neglect my health often because I'm sitting slumped over here drinking coffee, working for all hours of the day. But I think it's such a different take, the thought and idea. And I'm so grateful that you're talking about that, the way that men neglect themselves. And I would say that most men in my life have neglected themselves. And, whether it's in the guise or under the mask of the common good of the family, which often is sort of like that mask that is what's said, but ultimately it's the lack of looking within, and acknowledging the worth of the man that's inside.
yeah,
And I've seen that, with my father, with my partner, with my brother, three wonderful men, all very different. But I think acknowledging their worth without it becoming a chest pounding
yeah,
worth, it's a hard balance, and understanding the value of your role in the home as a man and believing it, like really believing it. It's a beautiful thing that you're doing, Ramel, because you're giving permission to so many men to take a step back and to understand where they've neglected themselves, where I don't even know if that's a word that's possibly in their vernacular at the moment. It may be, I'm feeling disappointed, I'm feeling yuck, I'm feeling down. But to go much, much deeper into those layers would be, I've been neglecting myself,
yeah,
haven't acknowledged my worth. And that's
yeah.
so wildly powerful.
And we joke about it nowadays. Like, well, you'll see like a reel or something online. It'll be like, I don't know my best friend's last name or something. And I'll be like, what did you and your guy friend talk about? It's like, oh, we didn't talk about anything. It was
Right,
only surface level. It's like,
right.
oh my God, like we've been together, but we were not really having these,
Yeah.
enriching conversations about who we actually are. And I've seen so many women have these like intense, intimate relationships. They know they're best friends.
Yes.
And I had to sit and say, oh, wow, I don't necessarily have that with some of what I would call my best friends.
Right.
And I want that.
Right. Right. I think there's two things I'm hearing from this too. One is the evolution of the feminist movement has hopefully allowed men to tap into their divine feminine, which is knowing. It's the
The
knowing.
intuition, yeah, the knowing,
Yeah.
yes.
The ultimate knowing with a capital T, the knowing.
Hmm.
It's also very interesting because, I do see those things on the internet, whether it's like interviewing a dad on the street to ask what his daughter's best friend's name is, and he has no clue, nor does he even remember his daughter's birthday.
Yeah,
It's just wild. My dad was the same way. He'd be like, that girl. I'm like, the one that I've been friends with since I was 6 and I'm currently 16? Claire?
yeah,
Like, it's just so wild. But I think that there's also, it just goes back to like the patriarchy and the need to keep such a alertness and protectiveness that there isn't time to seep down low because
yeah,
it's sort of like at the forefront of like fight or flight. And so many men I know kind of live in that fight or flight. So there's no room to like
Yeah.
dive deep and remember the details, you know?
Mm-hmm.
And so when people like you who are out in the community, who are, you know, many different intersections of creativity as a man, as a Black man, you're giving permission to so many of those intersections to sort of stop and take a look at themselves through that. And I appreciate the role that you play in our community by giving people that space and that permission. That's such a big part of your power, is the space you hold for others, but also the empowerment that you give them to just take another step back and look at themselves because of the words that you use, because of the time that you've taken to feel that yourself, write that down, express that through music, and then turn it into this book. So I really thank you for the work you're doing for all men, but especially those who get to see you closest in San Diego, because those are men in my life. Those are, you know, my son may pick up that book one day and understand himself better because of it. And we need more people like you.
Thank you, thank you. I hope it's effective, and it's glad
It
to hear
is.
that it.
It is. It is. Let's talk a little bit more about some of the creative stuff you're doing. You've got Creative Mornings, which is now one of the largest chapters in the world for Creative Mornings. Tell
Yes.
us a little bit more about what's coming up for Creative Mornings, how long you've been doing it, and some of the highlights of your time with them.
Gosh, well, one of the highlights with Creative Mornings, which is a breakfast lecture series, it's all over the world, and we have people that are creative, like yourself, or that are making moves in their creative communities, come and do a lecture. It's about 20 minutes, and there's free coffee, free donuts, and for our San Diego Creative Mornings, about 200 to 300 people come out to the San Diego Library, and it's always on the last month or the last Friday of the month. And one of the highlights was you, and it was talking about patriarchy. It was with Camilla, and it
Mhm.
was like a panel, and that was awesome. And I stepped back that day, and we had someone else host it because it just made sense with patriarchy. That was Kelly that came in.
It was Matriarchy. That
Yeah,
was
it
the
was
time.
matriarchy. Yes, sorry, matriarchy. Yes. And so I've been hosting that since about 2021. It's been amazing to see it grow and change and evolve. Nate Speed was the person that started it in San Diego around 2014, 2015. He passed me the torch, and I've just been running with it. And I would say it started focusing on a lot of the creative agency work, and coming in as the host, I've expanded it to say the healers that are there as well, and some of the activists, and looking at even existing and creativity and healing and nature and the environment as different forms of creativity.
Yeah,
And so just it's hard to point out one pinpoint, but just
sure.
even that change and acknowledgement of different forms of
Yeah,
creativity has
absolutely.
been a pivotal point. And right now, honestly, we're running on a shoestring budget. So we're looking for sponsors in that process of putting everything together. Because I think people look at it from the outside, and it's so big from the
Right.
outside. You see, like,
It's such a strongly, consistently, I mean, talk about reaching the ultimate audience in San Diego.
yeah,
Creative Mornings has this concentrated group of 300 of
yeah.
the most innovative, creative, mind expanding, accomplished human beings. People would be crazy not to have that be one of the first things that they go to when they want to spread the word about their own brand. Are you guys set on the space that you have? Because I have some ideas that we could talk about offline for this.
Yeah, let's collaborate. The library has been our home, but we just were at the Natural History
Oh,
Museum
cool.
last month. That was incredible. We've been at the courtyard before, we've been at Mingay before, but for the most part, I'd say 80% of the time we're at the San Diego Library. It's so
Yeah,
central. They've been so helpful, and
yeah,
it's been easy to plug in.
yeah.
Like if you're doing events, sometimes you have to bring the stage, you have to bring the sound. The library has been so helpful. And then Scott, who is part of the Library Foundation, he can easily come, and he always says really funny jokes.
Well,
Everybody loves Scott at Creative Morning, so it's always fun to
I
have him there
really,
too.
I really enjoyed my experience. For those of you, I'll link it once this goes up.
Please.
We got to really kind of break down what it means to what the word matriarchy means. And,
Yes.
it was beautiful because we had two women, myself and Carmela. And so it was nice because it was through the lens of how we mother our communities. And she and I are both creatives in San Diego working in different sectors. Carmela and I were able to do with you.
Yeah.
It was a really incredible time. And that's where you and I started to talk about human horticulture and the idea
Yeah.
of placing the right people next to each other so that the entire community could
Yes.
thrive. And I think that's really sort of like I see you as the gardener of that in San Diego. Like you really bring so many different types of people together that all end up really forming the strength of this community, and it's in so many different ways. Like I've mentioned so many different things, but I'm also thinking about a time that you and I were selected for some kind of like community questionnaire, where we were in a group of maybe like 10 people, and they're really trying to solidify, the creative community in San Diego. And I just feel like we're getting there, and we've been saying we're getting there, and I think
Yeah.
we're almost there. But it does feel stronger than ever. It feels just like with the World Design Capital being, selecting San Diego and Tijuana as the region, and
Hmm.
the endless opportunities for, creative pursuits, clients, businesses to be highlighted
Yeah.
in that, to always be able to own that. San Diego Design Week coming up, and a lot of really exciting things happening around that. Creative Mornings being as strong as ever, shows and books coming out. I feel as though people are making moves in ways they were maybe hesitant to make before. Do you feel the same way?
Yeah, I feel like people know that they can't wait. This is one of the
Yes.
most pivotal times. There's no more time to wait. You can if you want to, but this is the perfect time. I mean, with all those things that you just mentioned, especially the World Design Capital, I was telling people beforehand there's going to be the bigger events, but this means that there's a magnifying glass on San Diego.
Yeah.
The government is moving as well and willing to teach us things, whether it's the far south border North Grant or like this creative art sphere that's there. And they're using these human centric design techniques to do so. So
Mhm.
I would say that I'm part of this process and explaining that process to others. They'll take someone that's a leader in the community in some type of way, teach them or have them involved in what they're doing. And then I can go back and tell that to the communities that I'm in. Like, look, this is where I learned, and then
Yeah.
I could be that human center that's of design that's expanding that conversation to other places. And so,
Absolutely.
I'm hoping that those conversations are affecting the people that are around me to say, you know what, just keep doing and put it out there. Just
Yeah.
keep doing and put it out there on all the levels, like
Yeah.
penthouse, pavement, or curve. Go ahead and do it. And I see that even in the vendors that are out there. I see
Yeah.
that in Barrio Logan. I definitely see that with even with Soho. I see that with the VC world that's out here. But it's time to magnify ourselves right now, or
Yeah.
act as the magnifying glasses on us.
Yeah, speaking of magnifying glass, let's talk about the feature in the UT that really talks more about this. It talks about the value of the creative economy in San Diego.
Yes, that was an amazing feature. I got featured in February, and I just put it back up online and
Oh,
everything.
I
And
remember it was in February, but I think
yeah,
it's a testament to everything we're talking about, right?
yeah, absolutely. And it basically tells uh you know, the entire San Diego, that there's $10 billion that creativity brings to San Diego.
Kyle.
Whether you're looking at the plays that are out here, whether you're looking at the digital publications or the physical publications or the PR firms that are attached to getting creativity out into the world,
Mm,
the study breaks down all the occupations, whether it's architects or painters or muralists or vocalists. It breaks down how much each of those occupations are making, how much they bring to San Diego. And I'm sure, just like we're talking about in this conversation, intuition allows us to say that there's a lot of things that are not in the study as well. But this gives us a broad view
sure.
of what the full capacity probably is.
Yeah.
And as a creative, creatively looking at these statistics together to say, what can we do to bring to this economy? And also realize that we're an economy. Like we always talking about in the Black community, how the dollar doesn't stay. It
Mhm.
only stay for a limited amount of time. Within the creative community, we can allow things to stay. We can
Yeah.
allow finances and funds to stay by pouring back into our community, especially if there's $10 billion going around. How can we look at these communities and say, how can we say build a solidarity community within that and make sure that we're working with each other um, as much as we can and build
Yeah.
as many frameworks and new ways to live and work so that the money stays here, because intuitively a lot of the creatives are they're a lot more empathetical. They're thinking about the sustainability of our communities as well. And
Yeah.
so I get into that in the study of, what is left out of here. And as I have this positionality of being in creative mornings, I want to use that to show different frameworks for creative communities.
Absolutely. Yeah, I think when you were talking about Nate bringing in the agency kind of side of the beginnings of Creative Mornings and then the evolution of it to really expand the idea of what it means to create and the giving light and importance to other forms of creation. I absolutely saw that change myself because I was never an agency girl. And
Mhm.
if I'm being frank, I think the agency world in San Diego is wildly underserving women. It
Mhm.
kind of feels like the man's club in a lot of ways, and they have maybe their one token girl that they maybe value.
Yeah.
I don't know. I won't speak to that, but I really have always felt strongly since I moved here in 2018, coming from Chicago, where the diversity of gender, identity, race, religion was so vast that it was a whole picture of the world in every single room and every single bus I took, every single club I danced in. And to come here, it felt like there was strong identities amongst communities, which I appreciated, but I very much felt confused by the number of agencies that were run by a bunch of dudes, and
Mhm.
within that, not seeing sort of any sort of importance placed on the role a woman plays in that world. And a long time ago, I was on a reality show through Amazon, produced and created by an amazing mentor of mine named Farisa Knox, who's gone on to do incredible things for the Joffrey Ballet in Chicago and just is an amazing woman. But a big part of the reality show was called PR Girls, and it was focusing on three different women in the PR world, myself included. And I said the advertising agencies was always for men, but PR is really for women because it's intuitive and it gives us a platform to be sort of the antithesis of advertising in some ways. Same thought, but we're not always allowed in that world. So I think PR was really created to give women their equalness in that world. And so I wanted to say that just because I still see that. I still see it's just interesting to me that there isn't such a mix. Like if there's a crew, like why are there always just so many men and there's not a lot of
Right.
women that I see unless it's like somebody's girl. Like, the honoring of the divine feminine in San Diego is still something I think we really have to work on. I still don't see it, I think, as much as I would like. But I appreciate spaces and places and people and groups like Creative Mornings that is where I feel like I see it as a result of the work you have done to really sort of open it up and really let it blossom and expand and have new reach and have new legs. And that's something that is wildly important to me. And I really, I was very honored to be part of it. And I'm glad that we talked about matriarchy because we could talk about it in so many different senses, whether it's the way that we nurture a community, the way that we play such a pivotal role in the workplace, but most importantly, I think another example of this I feel in San Diego is in some of the restaurant groups. There are highly and heavily male dominated restaurant groups. And for me personally, as an expert in hospitality, having worked in it for over 10 years, having consulted with Michelin chefs, opening, many new restaurants in many different ways, what I see, I can tell when I walk in. I always say they just needed a woman to just pull back just a little
Mm-hmm.
bit. It was like everyone put every idea in, and women have this innate ability to just pull back a little bit, just that final touch of taking off maybe that one extra accessory that's not necessary. And I am excited to tell you that I am working toward being part of a hospitality group. That will not be the case.
Okay.
And so thank you. Yeah, I'm excited. I'll talk about it more as it becomes more firm, but I'm excited.
So that's the perfect analysis towards industries, specific, especially the PR and the like bro life in the agency world. I don't
Yeah,
know too
man.
much about hospitality, but come from a distance, I see and feel that. And I have to give a shout out to the Creative Mornings team because besides myself, it's a group of women.
Yeah.
We got Stacey Edelstein that's there, Ashley Rose just joined the team,
Cool.
Devora. And so it's that pulling back of and listening. It's that
Yes.
pulling back and listening. That's how I learned about leadership, is that it's a lot of listening more so than like being a tyrant of saying, okay, you do this, you do this, you do this. It's like
Hmm.
listening to everybody and having that ability to lead in that form, which
Yeah.
is hard. It's hard to do because naturally, as a person and a human, you're like, oh, I have great ideas. My ideas
Right.
are so great, but it's to pull back from that, and it makes things better. It feels like a contradiction while you're doing it,
Yeah.
but it makes things a lot better and a lot more subtly universal.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, thank you so much for your time. Anytime I get to talk to you, I feel grateful and refreshed and honored. And I know we've been friends for a long time, and
Yeah.
I'm so happy that we got to have you on the podcast.
Thank you so much. I appreciate you for your time and how you make people see themselves and the perspectives that you can analyze the different industries and people from. I appreciate your complexity.
Thank you so much.